January 24th, 2026. Hello, I am John Michael Chambers, and welcome back to the monthly broadcast, Eyes on Gitmo Wartime Analysis. This can be viewed at jmcbroadcasting.com and on our distribution network. Joining me today to discuss all things Gitmo, including a wartime analysis, is retired Brigadier General Blaine Holt, retired Lieutenant Colonel Matt Mack, retired U.S. Navy Captain Peter Madison, and we are expecting, actually we have in the house today, Mr. Juan O'Savin is also joining us. And to our viewers, their biographies and contact information can be found by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. And on the upper left-hand of the nav bar, navigation bar, you'll see contributors. You'll see a photograph, biography, and a link to our contributors' world to follow them and learn more about who they are and what their work is. All right, having said that, I'm going to do a very brief monologue to bring us into the zone, and then we'll bring our esteemed panel on. The world is being set free. A lot of chaos, a lot of disruption, a lot of confusion, and a lot of danger. That's what happens when you put order into chaos, into evil, which spits off chaos. Patriots, Anons, and digital soldiers, the storm is here, and it's not what the fake news peddlers want you to believe. This isn't speculation. This is the real-time takedown of the global cabal, and it's happening right now, the very beginning of 2026. The deep state puppets are crumbling. Their financial empires are collapsing under the weight of their own lies. Silver is surging like never before. The shorts are getting wrecked. Banks are panicking, and the precious metals reset is signaling the end of their fiat slavery system. Our commander-in-chief, President Donald J. Trump, the military, and its global alliances, the White Hats, are in full control, executing the final phases of the plan that's been in motion since the awakening began. That doesn't mean we rest on laurels. We're not out of the woods yet. The war is still ongoing. But Iran is boiling over with unrest, not random chaos, but orchestrated exposure of the globalist networks pulling the strings in the Middle East. It's all connected. The same forces that locked us down, poisoned populations with experimental jabs, and stole elections will soon be facing military tribunals. Mass arrests are ramping up. High-profile traitors, corrupt politicians, big pharma execs, and central bankers are being rounded up behind the scenes as we speak. Is Gitmo at capacity? Are new facilities for processing coming online? We'll be exploring this and more in just a moment. Common law is returning. Sovereignty is being restored, and the people all over the world are rising. This is the shift from cabal control to white hat dominance. The matrix is glitching, the veil is lifting, and the great awakening is turning into the great reckoning. We warned you years ago, many of us warned you years ago, about the bioweapons, the election fraud, the child trafficking rings run by the, quote, elites. We were called crazy conspiracy theorists. Now the proof is undeniable. And the normies, or the target audience, if you will, are starting to see it too. Trust the plan. It's being executed with military precision. Military intelligence is running the show, and President Trump never really left office. He's overseeing the final mop-up now. Hold the line. No fear, no retreat, never give up. The world is being set free, one exposure at a time. One JAG and Gitmo adjudication at a time. And in my humble opinion, the next few months will bring seismic revelations, black swan events, market resets, public disclosures that will shatter the illusions forever. Yes, the world, one step at a time, is being set free. And nothing can stop what's coming. This is God ordained. Nothing can stop what is coming. And yes, the best is yet to come, as the dawning of the golden age is just around the corner. We are en route to bringing justice and setting humanity on its God-ordained course correction. Having said that, let's bring our esteemed panel on, and we'll jump right into the heart of the matter. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for being here. Before we get into a lot of the issues of the day. And Gitmo, I've got some pointed questions concerning Gitmo, which we will get into in just a minute. But before we do, let's discuss the plight of Tina Peters. This completely innocent Gold Star mom was just recently assaulted by an inmate who incidentally stabbed her fiancé 3 times. While this inmate assaulted Tina, it is Tina Peters they sent back to solitary confinement, while the one doing the assaulting was returned to her standard cells, I come to understand. The American people are furious about this and praying for Tina's release. We've discussed her case on this previous Eyes on Gitmo panel, but are there any updates concerning this case? And I can tell you, gentlemen, the people want to know why President Trump's hands seemingly are tied and why we simply don't send in, let us say, the special forces and free Tina now and sort out the details later. And I know that's a fired up statement, but I know that that's what millions of Americans are wondering about today. And normally I would start with Brigadier General Blaine Holt, but I'm going to start with Juan O'Savin on this question. Juan, and we'll go through the panel for any feedback from everybody here. Juan, please speak to us about the plight of Tina Peters. Why is Trump's hands seemingly tied, and updates, and what do you see happening?
Well, I can guarantee you that President Trump is very sensitive on all matters related to Tina, and there is things that are going to happen, but timing is everything. And he has, it's kind of like Maduro down in Venezuela. He had lots and lots and lots of opportunities to uh, withdraw, go have a nice life, and get out of the way. He was baited along by some of his cohorts who had their own interests, and ultimately, against his own best interests, tried to go head to head with Trump. And he will now spend the rest of his life in this world behind bars, as will likely his wife and son. And Colorado's in a similar situation. The governor has chosen to go head to head with President Trump. His actions regarding the pardon that President Trump issued for Tina are ultimately seditious and aimed at undermining the authority of the President of the United States. The fact of the matter is, as I've stated previously, there is no case precedence where any pardon, any presidential pardon, has ever been overturned and or ignored. In the states, in this matter, they may want to challenge this, and but I don't think that Trump ultimately is going to wait that long before he takes action. He is sensitive to Tina's plight and health. There's, an intent not to do what he has to do next 1 second early. We can't afford that, even just for one person as important as it is with Tina. So I trust his judgment. And I will say this, this further heightens the attention level for everybody related to Tina. I mean, the the scales are way out of whack on justice on this. And Matt, I don't know, you had a little bit more communication maybe today than I did on some of this. Anything that I'm missing there?
No, nothing significantly missing, save for I know she's filed a complaint, a criminal complaint, in the Colorado Department of Corrections against the person who attacked her. And I won't go into details. Juan, you know what I'm talking about. I do know that somebody central to Tina's case was having a meeting this evening, I believe, with President Trump, and I'm sure that will be discussed amongst other things. And I just leave the audience just to ponder this. Tina has a 9-year sentence. This person who provoked her, who punched her. And Tina has on her left arm, she's got a bruise from the elbow down about like this. And that person stabbed her fiance 3 times. Very significant actions: assault and battery, stabbing. She has 6 years. Tina was given 9 years. And just one other thing I'll point out: you talked to John Case, who's one of our attorneys. You talked to Peter Tickton, who we've become to know pretty well. And not that they have definitive evidence, but they said they don't think it's a coincidence that that attack happened at the time frame it did, right on the heels of a very good appellate court hearing where the appellate judges were kind of reading the riot act to the prosecution and the lower court, and the governor of Colorado pulled this, indicating the sentence was harsh. So I don't think Juan and John in the audience, I don't think that the timing of this attack was entirely just by happenstance.
Yep.
Yep. One would assume that to be the case. Anybody else on this panel? Let's go to Captain Madison, sir, if you would like to comment on the Tina Peters issue.
Sure, John, thanks. And I think Juan and Matt have probably the most recent info. That's where I get a lot of it from, in fact. Yeah, for the audience, these things that are happening, it can be very difficult to understand the timing, to understand the injustice that happens. And it reminds me of, from certain aspects, the story of Joseph from the Bible, how he was unjustly jailed and went through many, many years of trial and difficulty with gross injustices happening. But in the end, was not only vindicated, but promoted. And I know Juan's talked about it on other shows, but from a chess perspective, when a pawn is moved to the other, gets to move to the other side of the board, it becomes elevated as a piece to a queen with a lot of freedom of movement and a lot of capability to take out the opponent's pieces. So, and I believe that will come in time, and it's important that we all be patient and believe that the timing is right. In the meantime, pray and believe that will happen, and pray for Tina's safety and for her health, and just keep the faith.
Thank you, sir. General Holt, do you care to weigh in on this before we move to another question?
Well, I will just say that I don't have any of the information that Juan or Matt have, or how she's doing, except to hear the news reports that are absolutely dreadful. I'll tell you, in addition to the frustration that Americans feel over Tina Peters, it's this carefree life that Jenna Griswold is now leading in Colorado, as if none of this matters. She just totally went after to try to wreck a person. The illegality of Jenna Griswold's actions fairly clear. And I get it. There's a plan. I hear you. But what I am saying is we are absolutely in the 9th inning of a very long war. And what we want to see is justice that not only touches and frees Tina Peters, but holds accountable monsters like the kind we find in Colorado and all of these other local and state level fraudulent people who call themselves civil servant. At the swamp level, they even try to call themselves the honorable fill in the blanks, which I find reprehensible. And it's on both sides of the aisle. There's no aisle. So if there's, over the Tina Peters case, some anger in my voice, it's on purpose. Normally I'm a little more detached, but I'll tell you, I absolutely find it unconscionable that nobody, from the J6 travesty and the violation of our constitutional rights, those people, or in the case of Tina Peters, who was being probably the very best American she could be. If there's a great plan that's going to round these folks up, cool. I'm all for it. But right now, since I don't have this knowledge, I join the rest of Americans who didn't vote for this. This is awful.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, sir. And you're
Hey, John,
right.
if I could
There
add
is
one
no
thing,
aisle.
if I could just one
Go
quick
ahead, Matt.
thing, what I think what General Holt is embodying people who maybe don't follow all of this every day, right? And this is the disconnect they have. They go, why can President Trump go into Venezuela and grab Maduro and get he and his wife out and can't get Tina Peters out? That kind of describes it to the average person out there who's just watching, maybe not completely informed on everything, but that's a disconnect for them that has yet to been bridged.
Well, that's a great point you raised, Matt. I'm glad. Do you care? Although you've already commented, do you care to follow up on that viewpoint that I think you're spot on about, with some sort of comment to that concern? Is there anything else you can add to that?
My 2 cents is we all know a president has a lot more leeway internationally, foreign affairs wise. There's more checks and balances domestically. And I'll just leave with a comment that Peter Tickton said, and Pat McSweeney has said this, both on Tina's legal team. You know, Pat was back in DOJ in the Nixon era with Robert Bork. Peter has known Trump since they've been 15. And what I hear, and I don't know inside baseball, but what I hear is Tina is very important. The 2026 election and getting it right is pivotal, and that's the focus of effort is that. And I can only imagine Tina fits into that somehow, some way that we yet don't fully understand. But even her attorney, who fights for her every day, said, yes, she is important, but 2026 is pivotal.
Thank you, Matt. And we're going to discuss the election madness and good news as well a little bit further on in the broadcast. A quick comment to General Holt. You mentioned there are no aisles, absolutely, and you used the metaphor of the ninth inning here in the war. Let's hope and pray we don't go into extra innings. I'm going to move us into a new subject here. If time allows, and we'll take it from General Holt on down the panel. If time allows, I'd like to have this panel weigh in also on what's happening over at the central bank, because money has a big thing to do with this war, and that's a battle that is raging at this moment. But setting the election theft of 2020 straight and bringing those to justice for this theft. We're going to discuss these things in this broadcast. But right now, General Holt, what is your analysis of Davos, the speech at Davos, from a 40,000-foot view, Greenland, and the Board of Peace? And just when will this Insurrection Act be called into play, or compartmentalized martial law? We're going to get into all that stuff. Why don't we chip away at that if we can at this moment?
That's
Your
a great
views, sir,
laundry
on
list, and
Davos?
it's
Yes,
also
go ahead.
cause for a great week. I just published a article on Davos at newsmax.com at my column, and the president. And I'll tell you what, I was, and Juan and Matt definitely know this. I was on pins and needles the entire time, because I was like, okay, we're going to send our president right into the heart of the beast, where every single person in Davos, right down to the shoeshine boy and the bus boy, want to kill him. Perfect. Can we get him to at least billet on Air Force One, or eat only American food and drink American water? So no, he brazenly went in there, and his team, I thought it was very, very poetic that his team was 300. I was thinking about the battle at Thermopylae between the Spartans and the Persians, of all things, and the mighty 300. But he went in there and he punched their faces in. And he did it, actually, his speech was very sedate to the way that his cabinet handled panels, dinners, and soirees. And when we talk about a morning before he arrived that started with the outlandishness, according to the globalists, of the Greenland issue, and now let's get back to the plebes eating crickets, and they need to do more to get our jets filled up with gas. Trump rolls in and just tears down the house and just basically defines terms. Globalism has failed, says Howard Lutnick. Christine Lagarde screams, leaves the dinner party. Larry Fink shuts the entire dinner down before dessert could be served. Ursula von der Leyen's eyeballs bleeding as she's arguing for more war, not talking to Russians, stealing Russian money. And then Zelensky, who is trying so hard to make everybody believe he had a great meeting with President Trump, but then his petulant side comes through with the moderator of the entire event, and he runs off the stage. In other words, the war is not over here, and the globalists in the City of London crowd is your enemy. They will not go quietly into the night, but they were dealt a serious punch in the face, setback. And then in the afternoon, we see that now everybody's President Trump's friend. Hey, the Greenland deal is going to go through. It looks like we've got the contours of that in hand. Looks like Denmark's going to buy going to get some American military equipment, and we all love each other once again, and we're all going to try to play ball. Well, this is really, I think internationally, the president is absolutely running the table, and he's doing so in a way that has put a fire blanket on World War III. In many different instances, we're probably going to see a little bit of action in Iran, but not what Bibi Netanyahu and Lindsey Graham had envisioned, with us just vaporizing Iran and hijacking those good people's revolution from them. In fact, it was quite the opposite. You could see petulant little Lindsey Graham running down the stairs to the Christmas tree the next morning, looking under the tree for his war, and he didn't find it. And again, President Trump's preference for demilitarized foreign policy shining through. He's rewriting rules, and through his national security strategy, the National Defense Strategy, which came out, and then the Financial Stability Oversight Council book, which really highlights the role of Scott Bessent as one of the top field generals on the Trump team. I see a rewriting of the rules. I see an arc, America, Russia, China, emerging, where we're not sweethearts and allies. We rub elbows together, but we have zones of influence in a multipolar world. And if you think that that's not what's happening, just go ahead and check out the price of the precious metals and the Japan carry trade unwinding. Those are indicators that President Trump is taking the petrodollar out of the clutches and the hands of the globalists. And I think this is where President Trump is, and his army and the machine and the plan are absolutely doing the right things. The only thing I would say, and I'll finish here, the enemy gets a vote. Don't forget that. And we had 4 years of open borders, and every terror cell is represented here. Every state actor is represented here. And when your enemy gets into a rough spot, going from their contingency plan to the emergency plan, they throw Hail Mary passes. Those can look like civil wars. Those can look like terror activations. Those can look like nuclear events.
Thank you, sir. Yes, the enemy gets the vote. Listen up to that, folks, real intently. Thank you, sir. Same question to Lieutenant Colonel Matt Mack. Would your 40,000-foot view analysis of what you saw take place at Davos?
Two things. One, you talked about Bessent. I've had a couple of friends say, "Oh my God, Bessent in 2028. That guy's just mopping the floor with people." And I'll be very brief. I'll just sum it up, kind of in a Marine Corps way. That day, Carney, gets a little smarty pants, gets a smart mouth, and runs off at the mouth at Davos. Trump comes the next day, basically says, "Hey, Mark, basically shut your mouth. You get freebies. We protect your ass. Bad on you. And by the way, you're out of the Board of Peace. So sorry. God bless Trump. I love it. I just wish he'd do more of that domestic."
Yeah, you bet. I think the American people are quite pleased with what they saw in Davos. I certainly am. Captain Pete, care to weigh in on this?
Absolutely. So, John, I see a lot of the same things. The righteous are as bold as a lion. And he went in there with boldness. And his team, they were all unified in message, and they were calling people out. And we have to remember that the people who are there, the New World Order folks, ironically, the old guard, really aren't the ones running the show. So he sent the emissaries of those who are running the show a very clear message. And of course, they were watching. Um, but it was a clear, bold statement. And interestingly, on the subject of Carney, I believe he was the head of the Bank of England. So that pull that thread if you want.
Pull that thread. Well said. Thank you, sir. 107, Davos. What did you see there?
Well, if you get right down to it, Trump has done, it's like we've been watching a parade. He had the military parade last late spring, early summer, and everybody got to see that across the world, Army's anniversary, 250th anniversary. But this parade has actually been going on across the world stage. And we talk about arrests. President Trump said there at Davos that arrests related to 2020 are coming. I think the Russia stuff comes first, then the 2020. But he is taunting the bad guys. The one thing that I think, a lot of people are looking for these things instantly, immediately. Why aren't they here yet? And a lot of that comes back to the U.S. So what Trump's doing is like ping pong. He'll do a bunch of stuff domestically. He did it cutting off the money supply with USAID, the Doge stuff, even before he took office, was hard at it. And then he goes offshore and he comes back onshore and he goes back offshore. It's ping pong. About the time the media and the globalists think they've got, a plan to contain Trump, he goes in the opposite direction or across the world. So he's playing the whole board. But in this parade, kind of an analogy, what's the last thing in the parade? It's the guys coming through to shovel the shit and to scoop it up. There's so much shit being left on the parade ground. And the arrests and the trials, that's picking up the shit. All those players have come out, they've danced, they've demonstrated, they've made a big scene. They're in this huge parade. That mop-up crew, that cleanup crew, is still a little ways off yet. We've got a few more moves to make. Even back, Trump said that in a few days, now this is almost 3 months ago, that he was going to sign an executive order related to the 2026 election. He taunts and baits the opponents in this chess at 5 levels. They make moves, they anticipate based on what he says, they try to get ahead of him. And he lets them expend energy, time, resources, ammo, coming after him to stop what he said he's going to do. They're making that first move and feinting which direction they want to go, who they want to use, how they want to do it, and expending resources. He lets them do that and commit, and then he makes his move. And so I think, we have some more stuff that's got to happen before he goes to the main stuff, getting ready to send people to Gitmo. But don't let anybody be dismayed, upset, feel like they got short shrift. That's coming, but it will be in due course, in its time, and as we deplete these enemies so completely, they don't have anything to come back at us with. And even Trump going to Davos. He didn't shy away. He wasn't going to show that he was scared, even when they had to switch planes. He's going. Nobody's stopping him. In order to take the fight to these enemies of the Republic, enemies of really the planet, because they wanted to enslave the planet, take over the whole planet, and in every category. And systematically, we're neutralizing their ability to do that. And last comment, just as General Holt said, the enemy does get a vote. They're not through, and we're still missing some nukes.
Wow, great analysis. Thank you, Juan. The art, well, what we're seeing here is the art of the deal and the art of war, well in motion by our commander in chief. And you said at some point at the right time, President will be sending people over to Gitmo. So let's put our eyes on Gitmo right now. In looking at the military flight maps, as well as other reports, seems there is an awful lot of activity taking place at various locations around the world with the JAGs and, of course, at Gitmo. What updates, we'll go to General Holt, what updates can you provide, sir, for us, if any, concerning activity at Gitmo and these various locations? And lastly, with the Executive Order 13818, it seems to me that assets and entities and individuals are being seized that could amount to hundreds of billions, if not trillions of dollars, and other assets over time. It seems there is more going on behind the scenes than is being reported, at least in the mainstream or relatively mainstream media reporting. General Holt, what can you tell us about the type of activity that is presently taking place with the JAGs and in Guantanamo Bay, and break down what you believe is taking place with the implementation of the seizing of the assets in the Executive Order 13818? Two-part question.
No, man, if I knew that, I'd sleep so much better tonight. But where but where I am at is I see concentric rings that you can observe as a strategist outside of Gitmo, outside of some action that might be prepared for JAGs and trials and tribunals and all of that. You know, strategically, the president is kicking over this massive hornet's nest called the cartels. And I believe, and I may be proven wrong, but I believe this is the war, or the point of entry to the war that the president has chosen to take. It is his line of entry. And what I mean by that is the cartels are such a good place to go because they are the vascular system to everything illegal on this planet, going right on up to the city of London and all of the trillionaires that run that wonderful desk. They do laundering through the cartels. They do human trafficking through the cartels. The narcotics, small part of it, but the narcotics are part of this. There's activity between the CCP and the World Economic Forum and the shadow bankers, the corrupt bankers. If you think that there's not paid off politicians, staffers, and lobbyists in DC, then you got to pay more attention. But the cartels and their money seep through all of it. If you want to get to how does the money go to pay for all these terror cells on our nation, this is how it happens. So he's taken that fight. And what he's also being very smart about is he punches and then he goes back and he observes and he goes and gathers intel and then he sees where the next punch is going to be. And while we are taught to believe on the mainstream press that these boats going to the bottom of the ocean are just innocent fishermen who are picking up some extra work, and that this is really what this is all about, or that we're really trying to take Venezuela's oil away from it, which, by the way, not a bad thing to be able to influence their resources, not take them away, but we are doing that. He is creating all kinds of intelligence as these crooks, these thugs, billionaire crooks and thugs, speak into their phones, type on their computers. We scoop it all. Bessent starts creating cost impositions. And what I believe is the ones you see in DC on both sides of the aisle that get up and throw rocks at the president for his actions in these regards, well, then go ahead and investigate them, because if they're openly and publicly siding with cartels over the American people's safety and security, well, then you probably have a clue that there's something else going on in their portfolios that they wish you wouldn't know. And does that all funnel into and lead to some action at Gitmo? Yeah, I think it does. But here's the problem. We got a shot clock, and the shot clock is ticking down on these things called the midterms. And if we're going to be doing an incredible sweep with an insurrection act and more, local, state, federal levels, man, we got to get cracking, because pretty soon here comes the summer, and here comes a uniparty where the Republicans are going to be totally fine with handling over power to the Democrats in both houses. This is my opinion only. I know it's not shared by everybody on this call, and they will. They know that the Democrats won't miss. They'll impeach and they'll get a conviction, and President Trump won't be our president by March of next year. So my sense of urgency is what I urge in all Americans. Pay attention, because
Well, I mean, I
President
just
Trump may
said
not
can't
have
talk.
3 more years.
I'm sorry. If we can mute Juan's mic for a moment. Continue, Blaine. We missed the last sentence.
So I was wrapping up, but I'm just saying that the sense of urgency ought to be on all our minds, because this accountability that you're talking about with Gitmo, if it doesn't happen and happen truthfully and honestly and round up the right numbers of people, then the swamp in DC will have everything it needs to hand that power to the Democrats, enact an impeachment. And you all may love JD Vance. I don't think as a lame duck president, he's really going to be carrying the water that President Trump was going to carry for the next 3 years. And I think we'll find our situation very harrowing. My hopeful side says, I can see there's a plan in motion. I can see things are happening. I can see where his line of attack is. I just know that what we have to do is be very mindful of the clock as we go.
Great point, the shot clock. I like that term, and that's exactly what we're up against. We've got that midterm date. We also have the other date of celebrations in July 4th. So a lot has to be accomplished in a relatively short period of time. And you mentioned, I'll put it in my own words, those that scream the loudest often have a lot to hide. Check their bank accounts, as you stated. You know, it's my understanding, and I've looked at the list, and perhaps this panel can validate it, that I think it was 60 senators and congressmen and women that a list has been provided from Venezuela's operation that they've all been taking millions of dollars. So there's that out there.
John, that list was
Matt.
bogus. I've seen that. I've seen the list. That list was bullshit.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks
Yeah.
for setting the record straight on that. Thank you, Matt. Any comments that you care to share on the issue of that we're discussing here, activity at Gitmo, that you have perhaps any insights that you're able to share with us? People are hungry for it, and they're going to other places, and I'm not going to name them. If you guys are bold enough, you certainly can. A news quote source that has all kinds of reports about all kinds of people being executed. I mean, on and on and on. Like, there's all this information. What say you, Matt? What do you know as true and credible information that you can share with us right now about any activity going on in Gitmo or the Jags?
Wow. Well, first off, John, it's hard to believe it was 22 years ago that I was down there. It's good Lord. I would say, to put it in context, something Peter Tickton said, again, probably somebody who knows Trump almost better than anybody. I mean, they were mutually called each other their best friends when they were rooming together at 17 at New York Military Academy. He's told me several on our show, on phone calls, he said, Matt, the president absolutely gets it. If machines are used in 2026, Democrats win the House, they win the Senate. And just look at the Jack Smith testimony yesterday. They're not done. Mm-hmm. They're just under the radar. They haven't stopped. They're waiting to regain power, and they're going to go for the jugular. So what Peter Tickton had relayed, that Trump knows this. He knows that if the machines are still in, we lose the House, we lose the Senate, he gets impeached, he gets convicted, he goes to Rikers, the kids are rounded up, the grandkids are rounded up, we are all rounded up. Things that Peter was privy to, I don't know where he didn't share, that had Kamala won, there were going to be mass roundups, mass indictments, and mass trials. That's what they plan to do, and they will do it again should they get in power. Now, about Gitmo, I'd say patterns, right? I don't trust just words or actions, but I look for patterns or disruptions in patterns. A couple of things. I know, because I know one here, and Juan knows the person as well, was a Marine Corps JAG, got activated to active duty. But interestingly, they're not serving in Department of War. They're being activated with funds from DOJ and going to work at DOJ and being trained and used as prosecutors. So and that's about 70 JAGs roughly have done that. So it's hard to reconcile that with tribunals because that's typically not Article 3 when these JAGs are being used in the Department of Justice. And I would say from a pattern perspective, and General Holt said too, these cartels, think about this. I was just on the phone with Ralph Pizzullo before I got on the show, and Ralph wrote the book with Gary Bernsen on the election fraud, right? What happened? And he has been talking to Gary Bernsen, Martine Rodil, Patrick Byrne, all those. The cartels writ large, their annual operating budget is $3 to $7 trillion. That's kind of like our size of what we do as a nation state. What I would say specifically and finally with Gitmo, John, is that normally, how Gitmo normally flowed people in and people out, normally, except when they were flying people either classified or not even detainees yet classified, they just flew them out. They kind of just disappeared sometime in the middle of the night, and God knows where they went. A lot of the planes that General Holt used to fly, they would just disappear in the middle of the night. But normally, the flow is what they call rotator flight. It goes through Jacksonville, Florida, from Jacksonville down to Gitmo. That pattern has been disrupted. And you saw the Secretary of War, when he first got in office, he was down at Gitmo, made a big thing about Gitmo. But then Gitmo's been, from competent, qualified sources, and I've been pinging the sources I know, been pretty quiet, John. And that is also indicative of why is it being quiet. And I'll just leave it at that.
Being quiet, interesting. We're going to take that on in a new question that I think, Matt, you can weigh in on quite a bit in a moment. Before we go there, Captain Pete, sir, do you care to weigh in on activity at Gitmo or lack thereof of reporting?
Well, John, I think this is a highly compartmentalized operation. So a lot of that information isn't going to be made available to but a few people. And I live in the Jacksonville area, and we see the rotator flights that Matt was referring to, and kind of can see the frequency because they fly pretty much right over our house. And so yeah, there are patterns that can be observed. I think pivoting just slightly on that is the nature of warfare for your audience. I think many people have a concept that warfare is between uniformed personnel, wearing the uniform of the United States and other, armies or forces, for example, and that has changed, right? We saw, over the past 30, 40 years or so, the terrorist construct where they weren't necessarily wearing uniforms, and now into the cartels. And I think for my time in the military, a lot of that was bifurcated. You could say that a cartel, anti-cartel action was considered law enforcement, and I think that's no longer the case. I think we have bona fide military targets in the form of these cartels. And one of the things that's important to do is before you conduct a strike, and I think we're, to General Holt's point, the clock is ticking, so it's going to need to be clean and swift if you want to maintain stability within the United States and the populace. So to do that, there is the need for intel prep of the battlefield, gathering a lot of intelligence on who the players are, who they're connected to. And I do believe, as has been mentioned, there are strong connections to many, many politicians throughout our country. And so that intelligence is being assimilated, assessed, and cases being prepared and ready to pull the trigger. When? I don't have any insight as to that, but as to when that's going to occur, but I do believe that the clock is ticking.
Thank you, sir. What comes to mind, you mentioned that perhaps only a few, because of the clandestine aspect of the operation concerning Gitmo, only a few perhaps know what's really going on. And that leaves a lot of room for all types of speculation and information and all kinds of quote sources that come up with quote evidence and so forth and so on. Well, I would just say this: look, we don't know what we don't know, and let's wait for the higher ups from President Trump and his circle and good insights from a qualified panel like this to factor that into your thought process to fill the void until things are much more clear to us. Juan O'Savin, do you want to weigh in on the Gitmo Jag aspect and the reporting from all kinds of people that contradict what we're stating here in this qualified panel?
Well, it's not even just Gitmo. One of the things that missed most people's attention was the announcement by the Brits that they wanted to shut down Diego Garcia. And why is that so relevant? Because we have another location that we have for detainees, as well as some major construction that's occurred over in Guam. There's other places besides Gitmo that are being lined up and readied. And this is a worldwide action. In all of the discussions, everything that you're seeing, remember, Trump didn't go to, some city or state here in the U.S. to address these globalists. They went to Davos, and they've been meeting there, in their little conclaves steadily for decades. Davos has been a central rallying point. He went right to the heart of the beast. And it's like going to the gates of hell and announcing, freedom. And so Gitmo may actually be later in this than most people have even understood as the attacks. Again, that's the cleanup phase. We're still in a major part of the fight. And, even here domestically, I've had numerous people, when's he going to sign the Insurrection Act? When's he going to sign the Insurrection Act? When's the storm? Well, the storm is here. We're right in the midst of it, but it hasn't fully developed yet. And, I believe there's still a near-death experience for America yet ahead. There's some great dramas still to unfold. And that's because the other side gets a vote. And they're going to try to stop what's coming. You haven't seen fully the wrath of these globalista in their response on any of the fronts. Even the tremendous surge in silver and gold prices over this administration, this second term of Trump. Astronomical, if you get right down to it. And what does it really reflect? It's not so much that silver and gold are going up. It's that the currencies that are being used, this paper fiat money of different, not just the dollar, but other, is going down in value. These international reserve banks, their paper is becoming worth less and less. And that's why I've told audiences over the last several years that you have to go to tangibles to survive what's coming. And these surges in the gold and silver prices are, let's just say you're looking at it the wrong way. It's not that gold or silver went up, they didn't. The value of the currencies that you buy them with has gone down radically and will continue to do so. Which is a good thing because we're going to a treasury dollar, which will actually be a certificate of deposit, just like President Kennedy had silver certificates that were tied to actual pallets of silver in the possession of the treasury, not just to paper fiat with no backing at all. And immediately after Kennedy was assassinated, Johnson, within just a few days, revoked that action and called back in all the silver certificates. President Trump was picking up where Kennedy left off, and that includes going back to a metals-backed currency run constitutionally through the U.S. Treasury and not through this usurping operation outside of the Constitution, known as the Federal Reserve and the international reserve system. And that probably is the biggest part of what Trump is doing, even at Davos, with what they feel is their threat. So they will fight back. We haven't seen their fury fully yet. That's coming, and so people need to be braced and ready that dramas are still ahead, and they're going to be epic. And in that uncertain season, probably we'll see metals continue to surge. Gold is right at the brink of crossing through 5,000. Silver crossed 100 dramatically, exactly as I told your audiences it would. It's on its way to 120 now. And everybody take a deep breath. Someday this war will be over, but not today.
Thank you. Thank you, Juan. Excellent analysis. A couple of takeaways I want to highlight, and before we move into some new territory, you said we're still in a major part of this war as a response to, heavy activity taking place or being reported at Gitmo, and that makes all the sense in the world. And we still haven't hit our near-death experience in the currency and in other aspects of the war. And what I would say is people need to apply 3 Ps: pray, plan, and prepare. Is my advice there. And we're going to touch more about silver, and great analysis, spot on what's happening in the central bank. We're going to come into that a little bit later as well. I want to start at the top of the board again with General Holt. Back to actually, let's go to Matt Mack on this one first, Lieutenant Colonel Matt Mack, and then we'll go through the panel. Concerning Gitmo, it is my understanding, Matt, as you mentioned before, you spent some time in some capacity concerning the establishing of the International Media Center at Gitmo. Provide as much detail as you can, painting a picture for folks here. What does the center look like? What is the vetting process for those in media to be granted access to this new media center? And will this reporting also include live reporting? And most importantly, when will this commence? So we'll go to Lieutenant Colonel Matt.
Wow, I don't have all the answers that you're probably looking for that, but I will tell you, having helped set it up, I mean, it's trying to think a point of reference everybody would maybe know. If you a normal size conference room, if you were to take that you'd see in any board meeting of a major company, maybe increase that in size by about 4 or 5. I mean, that was the main location for housing, press, housing, media. When I was there, they were all in this wonderful BOQ, which was a high-rise BOQ there at Gitmo. The vetting process we had then, and I don't know how it's changed now, but I imagine you'd have to be a Pentagon vetted media source, I would presume, still to be reporting from there. There were no live reports during tribunals. That did not happen. However, there were spots where they could set up live shots outside the facility and report on things they saw that day. So that's kind of, I think, what they're still doing. But again, I have not been there in 22 years, and I know much more has developed. But what they will be very, I think, strict on is making sure people who are in there are vetted by the Pentagon. And it's interesting because look who didn't abide by some of the new rules in the Pentagon, and they decided to hoist their own petards out of there. And you'd have, let's call it new media, or not all corporate controlled media, that now reports from there. Some good, some maybe not media, but more influencers, not journalists. But at least they agreed to abide by the rules of the road. So I think that's who you're going to see down there, and it's going to be interesting because where that media center is, Again, it's on the main side of the base. It's away from the landing strip side. You got to take a ferry to get across to the main side, and it is probably almost on the opposite side of that part of the base from where Camp Delta and Camp X-Ray was back in the 2004 timeframe, where we kept all the detainees. They were on side this one crest of a hill on that side of the base. That's where they stayed. The JDOG, or the Joint Detention Operations Group, they were housed over there. There was a chow hall over there. There was a maximum security prison over there. Then on that, coming over the crest of that hill, was the living side of that part of the base, which was the commissary, the exchange, the movie theater, which was it was like a drive-in movie theater, but with seats, inside seats sitting outside, because it hardly ever rains there. And then that media center was between where the ferry lands and that more of the everyday life area of that side of the base. That's where that media center was, and that's where that facility was also to house the tribunals per se, because what we were doing down there weren't tribunals as much as they were processing to determine if the 535 folks there were properly classified as enemy combatants. It wasn't a tribunal for Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and so forth. So, John, I know it's kind of all over the place, and it doesn't answer it specifically because I haven't been there, but that's what you could expect.
Well, a lot of good insights and good information. Thank you, Matt. A quick follow-up that I wholeheartedly agree with is we don't just want to see ABC, CBS, and NBC down there. We need some fresh blood. We need some good media reporting, be it an influence or whatever word you'd like to use. And I just want to make sure that I got this clear. Did you state that the vetting process for the candidates to report from Gitmo at Gitmo would be conducted by the Pentagon? Is that accurate?
That's what I
To
would
the best of your
suspect,
knowledge.
that you had to get cleared through that way before when I was there. And I think that's why, in some ways, the Pentagon put down some new rules of the road for media. You're going to be reporting. And the Pentagon, the Department of War, controls Gitmo, not the Department of State, not the Department of Justice. That is outside the purview of Article 3 courts.
Well, thank goodness for that. And let's take this question to General Holt. Any contribution or comments you'd like to make on the media center forming and soon, hopefully, to be active for the public to witness at Gitmo?
Well, if it's going to be done right, and since I seem to have the hard edge tonight, I will just say that there is a full range of options for punishments at Gitmo and treason. And it doesn't have to stop with a jail cell. And so the things that have been done to this country, I don't think should meet with leniency in some of these cases. And I hope that they've thought that through, and I hope they've thought the comms through on how to prepare the country for something like that.
Good point. Thank you, sir. Captain Pete, do you care to weigh in on the Gitmo Media Center?
Well, John, I think what's been said is very important. That the consequences for these people's actions are severe, and they need to be severe. And with that, the importance of reporting things as they are, and not having the enemy, if you will, in the middle of your reporting camp, right? And trying to get the facts and the truth out of exactly what happened, why they're being punished for those particular crimes, and to have it not spun. And we've had the enemy in the middle of our camp, if you will, from a media perspective and an information warfare perspective. It's been very challenging. And you hear President Trump, he said it from day one. He calls them the fake news. And he's not joking. In the beginning, a lot of people were wondering why he was saying that. Hopefully more and more Americans are seeing why he says it that way. And I think that plays into Gitmo and other places where these trials are going to occur.
Thank you. In your opinion, I'm not certain you would have a definitive answer, but based on the series of events that we see unfolding in the various stages and aspects of the various battles we are engaged in this war, and the ninth inning, as General Holt stated, um, uh, do do you have any opinion about when you think this will be activated, so the American people can start to see things, proper reporting from Gitmo itself? Uh, June, July, late spring, crystal ball question. It's got to happen this year, in my opinion.
John, I don't have any insight on dates. I think a lot of this
Mhm.
is event driven, not date driven. In a good military operation, you may have dates from particular perspectives of what happens in the environment, winter, spring, summer, etc., things to that nature. But I think it is very much event driven. They make a move, we make a move, kind of thing, and the enemy does get a vote. So to ensure that the conditions are set such that when these trials do occur, that and I think General Holt mentioned it, the criticality of preparing the American people, because they're frankly not used to seeing it. People cry for justice. People cry for wrongs to be righted, but are they ready to see it?
That's a good point. People need to be prepared. One last comment, mostly to what Matt had spoken about, and yourself, Captain Pete, to an extent, is when we look at the transformation instantly, as soon as this new administration came in January of last year, concerning the press room with Caroline Levitt at the command, if you will, of the podium, it seems to me that the level of control to get the right information, the proper reporting and questions addressed has taken a complete turnaround with this administration, and that's good news. And I would just suspect the same thing, if not even greater, to occur at Gitmo, since the stakes there are very, very high in terms of reporting. For the reasons you just stated, if things have to be done right here to eliminate a serious shock factor for the people of the world. Same question to Juan. Gitmo Media Center, you're the first one that alerted me personally to this on a broadcast we did quite some time ago, and it seems to be encroaching upon us this year. What's your take? Anything you can contribute on the media aspect of Gitmo?
Well, um, let me just address something that General Holt saying ninth inning. This might be more like a series. You know how with baseball teams they'll come in and do a double header, or they'll have 3 games in a row in town because they're in town. It's hard to travel, and so you get through one game and then you have the next one, and it's who wins best 2 out of 3, or all 3, or none, or whatever. Um, there's at the very least extra innings, if you want to stay with that kind of thing, that are coming. I don't think we're anywhere close to the end, although it may feel like it should be the end because we've gone through so much. I don't think that we have a context to compare what's happening in the world with. It's never happened in our lifetime. This is so much bigger than almost anybody can perceive. And in order to get to justice, how people perceive things is reality. So perception is reality. And so we need the perception as we come through this at the end that, in fact, there is justice, and it has been served in whatever the outcome of the events that we're in and going through is. The stolen elections were done in the context of killing millions across the world with a fake disease. And it was a cover for a stolen election operation across the globe. The people involved intended to enslave the whole world. somebody mentioned the other day, yeah, but they'll go light on them and nobody's going to do heavy prison time and on and on. The reality is that then justice would not have a perception of having been served, and there wouldn't be, without consequences equal to the crime, then that is not justice. And we need the perception, not just for this generation, but for generations to come. We need the perception, the imprint, societally, nationally, globally, to be that it may be slow in coming. When it finally does come, it is harsh, severe. There's a certain divinity to seeing justice done. And a slap on the wrist is not adequate to the task, even for people that may say, I didn't go into the bank and rob the bank. I wasn't armed. I didn't shoot anybody. I was just in the getaway car, keeping it warm and cozy for when the guys got out of the bank. And, we didn't exceed the speed limit as we drove around the side of the bank and down the street. There has to be a imprint from the events to come, Gitmo and others, the trials, the exposure of what actually occurred. See, it's not just the trials themselves to see punishment to those involved, but it's also the putting out the true information in its magnitude, in its grotesqueness of exactly what was done for whatever gain or perceived gain, so that people see the horrors, and that's to do justice to the victims. You don't do it you don't do the trials for just to be titillating or something. You do it to honor the lives, the memory of those who were victims. And if you don't do full justice, then you dishonor the victims. You minimize the horrors that have occurred, and you minimize their lives with it, and society, who we are, because you don't do that. You must show the horrors of what has occurred under these people and what they would have done had they been able to grasp the gold ring and win this thing. And we're not going to let them win. And that's why even President Trump is setting a tone in the banter with what he said there at Davos of what's coming. It will be much more extreme, harsh, severe as we get to actual trials. And these people know that, so they are going to lash out with all the venom they can. They'll be spraying venom every direction they possibly can, as they already are. Even here in America, I don't think we've seen as much as they would like to do with civil unrest. They would like us to go to civil war. I've warned on that numerous times that is a line that the president and the people behind him are very guarded against allowing to occur. But these people are trying to take the country to civil war, and we won't give them that opportunity. But civil unrest is absolutely going to be part of what happens here, and those that act out and are demonstrative will pay a price, and they'll reveal themselves, and they will be off the table, out of the game, and thank God in heaven when that happens.
Yes, we see that civil unrest already beginning to play out in various cities across the country. Juan, you mentioned a double header, going back to the baseball metaphor. Let's hope it's just long extra innings and not the launch of a whole second game. But I get your point just the same. And we have a couple of more questions I'd like to address as we're in the ninth inning of this broadcast at this time. We'll go back to General Holt. I recently interviewed Dr. Jan Halper Hayes, who serves on a Defense Task Force, who's presently, I understand, being vetted for another position, I believe, in the present administration. And she concluded that much of the justice that is being and will be played out and will be serviced will not happen in the civilian courts due to the corruption in our judicial and justice department, but rather being administered via the military tribunals. And Caroline Levitt said this, and I quote, Barack Obama attempted to overthrow the United States government in 2016. The sitting president in 2017 overthrew it in 2020. And now, in just 12 days, this was posted a bit back, justice will begin to be restored. All right, so the Democrat Party, here's another soundbite in the news cycle I'd like to bring to this panel's attention. The Democrat Party is being investigated now as an organized crime entity. According to George Papadopoulos, who was interviewed very recently with Steve Bannon, said this, and I quote, FBI Director Kash Patel and DNI Tulsi Gabbard are likely looking into RICO charges to prosecute the Democrat Party itself. So as FBI Director Kash Patel has also laid out, as has the DNI Gabbard, that the FBI, the DOJ, the DNI, and the CIA are looking at a 10-year-long government conspiracy case in which, again, they're likely going to look at RICO charges against the Democrat Party itself and the left of some sort of criminal organization, as some sort of criminal organization. As I conclude this setup, since this implicates elected government officials and former President Barack Obama and others in Congress, seems to me, as I connect the dots, this ultimately ends up for him and them at Gitmo. Lastly, and why is Representative James Comer still grappling with the non-compliant, law-violating Clintons versus a referral to Gitmo? So a lot to unpack here. General Holt, would you take some time and these subjects to the American people?
Yeah, so I'm glad you said that last part, because it kind of is going to be a supporting point for what I'm going to say, which may not be popular. I don't understand this. I don't understand this spearhead where we use the term Democrat when we start investigating the parties, and I certainly don't understand a 10-year time frame at all. I get 2016. I get what Obama did. I understand all that. But this war, if defined properly, is really we the people versus they the swamp. We're not represented in our government anymore. The government cannot be trusted. Government can't be trusted by elected politicians, can't be trusted in the staffers, can't be trusted at the K Street lobbyists or all of the little urchins that call themselves NGOs, the law firms. The swamp is moving now to protect itself. This is an environment where there is no aisle. So why do the Republicans get a pass? Why wouldn't they say, well, we're going to get after all of it? In other words, and I think Juan made this point, the optics and the acceptability to the American people are going to be very important for the duration after all of this occurs. And if that's the case, if you simply boil it down to, in a cynical sense, one body with power went after the other party without power, and rounded them up, that is not going to reach with the American people on a broad base of acceptability, in my view. I could be wrong. I just don't think I am. And now back to your final point. When we look at the Republicans are failing this president. They are actively working against him. This is malevolence, not incompetence. Between Thune and Johnson, we have a GOP that has not codified one executive action. We have a GOP that has not taken DOGE as seriously. In fact, they watered it all down through the One Big Beautiful Bill. They have oversight responsibilities that ask lots of embarrassing questions, never have teeth, never have anybody being going beyond where the camera lights turn out, maybe the odd referral or two. And then you have a Congress that is of the president's party that is actively denying the man his ability to get seated, his attorney generals across the states, his nominees, appointees. Speaker Johnson won't do anything, even though he has the power to, with these Article 2 judges. And so, if it's so, and maybe it's just a communications problem between Tulsi, who I think the world of Tulsi. I think she's probably the best one on his entire administration, in my view, or from what I can perceive. But to say this is an action, we're going to round up Democrats, I think it's a misstep, and I hope that it's just a communication thing, and that really at the end of the day, if you've betrayed this country, we could care less what political stripe you wear. You don't get a pass.
Thank you. General Holt, quick question.
Hey, hold on. Can I jump here for a second, John?
Go ahead, Ron.
I just want to, General Holt mentioned the 10-year thing, and I want to clarify something. The time period that we're talking about here, remember that Debbie Wasserman Schultz, as we came into the 2016 campaign, tilted the board in favor of Hillary Clinton over the Democratic Party, that it was so egregious that we had the kid, what's his name, that took the data out of the servers and passed it on to WikiLeaks, and Seth Rich, and in that context, remember also you have interviews that are out there describing the weaponization under Obama of the FBI and the Justice Department, where they were trying to set up Hillary Clinton. That's why they sent Pat Byrne to try to get Hillary Clinton accepting bribes so that they could control her after she won the election in 2016, control her in her presidency. That was something that Obama was supervising with Comey. We had Comey having FBI officers, female agents, who he sent illegally without any justification, initiating suspicion of a crime, into President or candidate Trump's campaign in 2016 to try and see if they could honeypot any of the people, the men within the Trump campaign, to give information that would help to tilt the scales. This was election interference, and it was done very specifically by the Democrat people in the Democratic Party, including people like Debbie Wasserman Schultz before she had to leave office or leave the Democratic Party control position in that 2016 campaign period. The reason that's important is those were initiating things. You could go back decades and decades, but you had to start somewhere with people that were affected, participating in the crimes from some point in time. And that's where they picked, was that stuff in 2015, 2016. And as it matured during President Trump's first term with the Russia stuff, trying to neutralize his power in that first term, and then put someone in through a fraudulent vote, which again was done by the Democrats. The one thing that I want to clarify, there are sins of commission. And those are things that Democrats, the Democrat Party, participated in and was involved in a very real way, including Democrat law firms who supervised the fake birth certificate, the fraud of an airplane crash in Hawaii, and all of the agencies involved in that fraud in order to cover up with the alleged death of the person who spearheaded getting that fake birth certificate out. But now you have sins of omission. And that is where Republicans were neutral and allowed this to happen and did not take active measures to stop the lawlessness because they also didn't like Trump. So, for the most part, on the Republican side, it's not what they did, it's what they failed to do, even though they had the power to and the responsibility to. And so, when you fail to act, uh, you're often as guilty or even more guilty than the parties that take a particular action. They were in a position to try to force that we return to some type of lawful society, elections, etc. And they refused to. They did not come to the defense of the president. They allowed the presidency to be neutered during the first term for Trump in many ways. And the only thing I can say to both sides is you may have thought you were in power. President Trump said it when he had all the generals assembled out there in Virginia. I am 45, 46, and 47. Behind the scenes, at the highest levels, the biggest gun, Trump never handed it over. And the music's about to stop for this whole operation. Justice will be served, justice will be done in order to bring America and the world back on track and back from the brink. And just as as President Reagan presided over the collapse of the Soviet Union, which we saw under Bush, but it was already a fait accompli because of Reagan's actions. Whatever happens, even out past this presidency with President Trump, the tide has already turned. Many of them, as marked men and women, will suffer in the hands of justice, as they have done to others and worse. Justice will be done. God Himself is behind this, and we're about to see something amazing, and in the end, terrifying, as it should be, especially to anyone who would even think about trying to do this again anytime in the near future.
Thank you, Juan. I want a
Hey,
quick
John,
follow-up with you, Juan. Yes, sir?
could I ask you one thing, or just offer one thing to tie in what he just said and what General Holt said? Remember John Solomon, I think it was on Ben, and the day after Trump had his speech at Davos, and John said Tulsi is about to declassify. And I agree with General Holt. I think Tulsi has more balls than any guy in that administration, except for the president. She's about to declassify information. I'm aware of what that information is, and it deals with the CIA's involvement in election rigging and overthrowing, not just here, but internationally. If that survives, if what happens is her John blowing your mind, if that is what comes out, we the people are winning this. If it doesn't, if it gets muted, cause for concern.
Thank you for raising that. Juan, real quick follow-up to you, and then the General Holt, and then we're going to take us in the wrap-up question here of our broadcast. But President Trump, I'm paraphrasing, in Davos, basically said, and he said it should be breaking news. He said that prosecutions are coming very soon as a result of the now official bona fide information of the election theft of 2020. Prosecutions are coming soon. So, folks, we have that. My other question to Juan is, and then my follow-up, same question for Blaine, and then we'll go into new territory, is this. Stating the things that we've just been listening to, it seems to me, especially off the heels of what Dr. Jan Halper-Hayes said, we're not going to get justice in the Justice Department on the civilian side for people like the Clintons and the Obamas and perhaps others in the three-letter organizations that Matt is referring to here in smoking gun evidence that's about to be released. Will these individuals, the big names I just dropped, will they be taken care of at Gitmo? Straight up question, Juan O'Savin and Blaine Holt.
Well, Trump said it during the debate with Hillary at one point. Why Gitmo? I built it for you. You know, if the Democrats could have shut down Gitmo, And I challenged back when during the Biden administration with many of the people. I said, okay, if you're so powerful and you think you're in charge, go ahead and shut Gitmo down. In fact, all you got to do is turn some of those Marines loose. Let them have the excavators, the backhoes, all of the earth moving equipment, because we had plenty of it there. Throw in a tank or two and a half track, and they can just knock all the buildings down, have a demolition derby day, and film it for everybody. Knock the fences down and shut down Gitmo. Um, uh, Nancy Pelosi, I said it numerous times, just go do it. Show that you're in charge. They couldn't shut it down. They never got one thing stopped. In fact, it continued to build out. They built a world-class hospital there, cost $100 million, and then furnished it with all the latest equipment. And in the paperwork, it says that it is essentially weighted towards medical processes, practices, equipment, etc., for geriatric patients. See, even with Hillary, even if justice is slow in this case, the stakes are so much bigger than just the individuals. We need the spectacle that comes from the trials, incarceration, and whatever else is dished out to these murderers and madmen and women. But for the whole world to see. That said, we need to keep them there for a very long time, the ones that is a spectacle to the world, a reminder to the world of who they are and what they tried to do. And I think that's exactly the way it's going to play out. But the one thing I want people to remember, President Trump, almost 3 months ago now, said that any day, in a matter of days, that's what he said, he would be signing the executive order concerning elections 2026. And of course, we know that to remove the machines and clean the voter rolls and all the things we put together within this group, the proposed executive order that is the basis for what President Trump is going to sign when he does that. But with that in mind, even here with what he said at Davos, he has taunted his enemies to action. And then when he makes those kind of statements, they go roaring off and they get panicky and they make moves, take action, do things that telegraph their next maneuver. The president's been extremely effective at baiting them into those next moves. And any good sports person, soccer, football, basketball, you're trying to get the other player to feint or move in a way that you can get them and to telegraph their next move and anticipate it. And that's what Trump is actually doing. He's anticipating moves, taking action, and baiting them again the next time, wearing them down and forcing them to use ammo to expend themselves further. Even in the Muhammad Ali mode of rope-a-dope, he absorbs those punches but saves his arms for later in the fight. And when he finally starts releasing punches, he still has his arm strength. He still has his quickness. He didn't waste it early in the fight. He took some blows. He used the ropes to help cushion the blows. Trump's doing all of that. When he comes out in these mid rounds to really go to war, which he's really out there now, that's this section, the enemies are much more depleted than you would at first think, and they're still dangerous. But the fight has shifted, and we have the momentum at this point in time. They're still dangerous, but we have the momentum.
It's a great analogy with Muhammad Ali and President Trump operating basis. Quick question to General Holt. We talked about the evidence coming out now, and President Trump saying prosecutions are in short order. We're talking about individuals that swore an oath in 3-letter organizations, former presidents, former Secretary of State, Are they going to be tried at Gitmo? Is this a military operation that will deliver the justice and have their day in court, so to speak, or will it be on the civilian side?
I don't see how the civilians could get it done with the volumes and mass that we're talking about. We're talking, if it's done appropriately and if it's done right, it's going to end up being thousands of people. And this thing is, if it's limited in a way that leaves the cubicle dwellers and the root ball of the deep state very much intact, clear to go on their favorite escapade to do another color revolution someplace, more grift, more corruption. If the deep state is left standing in some sort of nucleonic format, and the tree has not only been pruned, the tree has been plowed down, mulched, root ball taken out. If that doesn't happen, we're going to be in trouble. And so the only way possible that I can see is mass processes, very efficient, like Juan said, great optics, but involves volumes of people who have not been accountable to their oath to the Constitution or our government or our people. In fact, they laugh at us from those cubicles with open disdain. They find us, we the people, to be reprehensible. And some of these institutions that we think are carved into stone constitutional tablets, like FBI, CIA, they're not. They're just fabrications of the last century by mostly evil men who were traitors to their country as well. And so, if we're going to get after this, we need to get after it thoroughly, and it has to have legs and duration.
Thank you, sir. Eyes on Gitmo is the name of this broadcast, and that's what our eyes are on right now. And we can see from this panel discussion that we'll be getting a lot of information a little down the line from Gitmo itself versus speculative data that can't be justified. I'm going to bring us to our last question to this panel. We'll start with General Holt. We'll go through the panel. It's evident, and Juan touched on this before, but I'd like to jump into it a little bit further and have the rest of the panel weigh in on it. It's evident to me that the Federal Reserve and the IRS, both unconstitutional, are being dismantled step by step, paving the way for a U.S. Treasury issued sound money per the Constitution. But I'd like you to weigh in on just what's going on that you see happening behind the proverbial Wizard of Oz's curtain at the central bank as it relates to gold and silver. Also, Juan O'Savin, Peter Schiff, Jamie Dimon, to name, and among many others, have reported great concerns of a systemic, devastating collapse within certain aspects of the bond market. So this is economic related to close out the show, and perhaps a far greater drop in value of the U.S. dollar, that being the real elephant in the room versus focusing on the stock market. I unpacked a lot there, but General Holt, can you comment on what you see taking place with the Fed, the IRS, and the implosion, as I see it, on the paper trading at the central bank, giving rise and shine to God's money, both gold and silver, that they have suppressed for decades?
Well, I would say that thank God Scott Bessent is who he is, and he's leading the charge here. He's a brilliant man. I think he understands full well when we think of we the people being victimized for untold trillions of corruptions, our tax dollars going to nothing on a faulty passed in the middle of the night 16th Amendment going back over 100 years. We're at the end of that system. We're in the fourth stage of financial collapse, and nothing's going to stop that. But what I think the soft landing might be for our country is what we see. And I think that I see the inklings of David Sachs and Scott Bessent engineering a cutover to a new monetary system. I don't know how that works. I think some of the smartest minds in macroeconomics probably have a good handle on that. But true to President Trump's form, it's a multi-benefit chess move. When this happens, he's going to be taking out globalists and financialists who deserve it when it's coming. And I think the metals are a great place to look at, because as this Japan carry trade unwinds and the metals go off into the moon, it's physical metal that's become unobtainium, and it's the paper metals that the Europeans are left holding the bag with empty vaults. where China won't export, the United States and Russia won't export. And I think that's really where the sport of kings is right now.
Well said. Thank you, sir. We'll take the same question concerning the central bank implosion, the rise of silver, or as Juan said, the apparent rise of silver, which is actually the declination of the dollar. All these issues, Lieutenant Colonel Matt Mack, please weigh in on this.
It's sad to say, 1913 was a terrible year for our country, but I think what you're seeing, just what I'm watching, observing with the Fed, Trump is leading us down that path, and he's discrediting, even his own words. The Fed has become discredited. He's making it a laughing stock, and then when you have something that's a laughing stock and ineffectual, why keep it? Right? It makes no sense. And number two, with the IRS, look at the comments he keeps saying with the tariffs and so forth, and he calls it the Bureau of External Revenue. Why does anybody, maybe you don't have to pay income tax? He keeps saying this, and I think he is indicating that's where he's going, because until you do that, get rid of the Fed, get rid of the IRS, think about it, John, we're slaves. If the Congress, through the IRS, can determine how much of your money you get to keep, are you a citizen or are you a slave? Easy question.
Great points, Matt. A quick follow up. I remember the comedian George Carlin. He reminded us that it's a big club, and you and me, we ain't in it. Well, this big club has been funding both sides of most of the war, reaping all the profits, laughing all the way to the bank at our expense. And all the Federal Reserve and the central bank system, by and large, has done with the authority that was given, as you stated, Matt, to them via Woodrow Wilson, who regretted it later in his memoirs in 1913, is all they do is they raise or lower interest rates to the detriment of us and our economy, and they increase or decrease the money supply to the detriment of us and the betterment of the club of which we are not a part of. This is what's being exposed. This is what is unraveling before our very eyes. And this is good news that we have people like Scott Bessent and President Trump and others getting us through this, because this got to be a major part, I know Juan would concur, of this war, because you want a jugular, it's the money, okay? They have the control, and they're losing it now, and they're panicking. We take the same line of questioning to Captain Pete, sir.
Now, John, I think it's important to emphasize that we've been under a lot of illusions. I think you've talked about that in this show and in others. Two of those we've had as topics today. One is the election system. We've had an illusion of a free election system. So peeling back the curtain, we have discovered that was far from the case. Well, the same is true in our monetary system. The perception of value, those things it's an illusion of value to the point where they stick it in our face. If you look at the term mortgage, right, what does that mean? I don't think a lot of people sit and look at what that means. They say, I just need to get a house, I need to get a mortgage. Well, it's French, it's conjugation of two words, mort and gage. Mort meaning death, gage meaning pledge. It's death pledge. So that for 30 years of your life, most people's working lives, they're going to suck the life out of you. And that's the truth behind the curtain is this monetary system that they have created. And Trump wants to help us be free of that, free in the election system, free in the monetary system. And if we look, when did Jesus really start to get in trouble in Jerusalem? When he turned over the money tables, because they were conducting usury. Trump mentioned that just in an interview, I think with Maria Bartiromo, if that's her name, if I pronounce it correctly. But he talked about the credit card companies and how for a year going to 10% interest, and they're all up in arms about, we're never going to be able to survive on 10%. They're whining and complaining and moaning. But he said it's usury. Well, if you look at what's happening in the metals market, talk about silver, for example. Silver, Jesus was sold for silver, and Joseph was sold for silver. And wouldn't it be that God turns that around and uses silver to destroy the bankers out of the city of London?
So well said. Thank you for the biblical metaphors as well. turning Jesus' temple into a den of corruption and money changers, and the mortgage. That's an interesting breakdown of the derivation of that word. And you're right; it feeds into the debt slave system. And you've raised some points of connecting the dots for people on us beginning to break away from this one step at a time. Like everything else in this war, we can't just pull the plug and expose and do everything. Good news or bad news has to be done properly, and that's exactly with military precision and with their man as the spokesman, our commander-in-chief, President Trump, leading the way. And you're right, it's an absolute illusion that we had a two-party system, illusion that we had free and fair elections, illusion that the greenbacks in our wallet is money when it's not. It's debt to a private bank, all right, or whatever you'd like to call the Federal Reserve. It's not a government agency. We know that. But anyway, Juan O'Savin, let's take this last question to you. Unpack this any way you choose, and I know you've got a lot you can contribute to this as well.
Well, Federal Reserve, no more federal than Federal Express, a Puerto Rican corporation that was out of the Philippines when it was first incorporated back in 1913. And it's not federal, it's a globalist operation. It's a global reserve system of which we are just a component in something much larger. Same thing with the IRS, by the way. The IRS, the collection arm for the Federal Reserve System, brought into place at the same year. Also, not a federal agency, no more federal than Federal Express either. It has an office in Puerto Rico that it operates from just down the road from the Federal Reserve. Yes, U.S. government federal employees administer those operations, but the IRS is a Puerto Rican corporation. Courts have found, okay? Courts have determined that. With that in mind, even the money, everybody here should remember it's a talisman. It's not backed in this world by gold or silver, which is constitutional money, is gold and silver coin minted by the U.S. Mint that the Treasury disseminates. That's constitutional money. What Trump is going to do is what Kennedy started, going to metals-backed certificates. Remember, Kennedy had the silver certificates that tied to gold and silver coin, in that case silver, but he was going to gold also, on deposit, palletized, identified with a serial number so that they weren't printing paper endlessly. It was tied to physical silver with a serial number. And that's where we're going to go back to. If you had a treasury certificate tied to gold or silver, would your gold or silver be worth more or less in this situation where silver's rising? No, it wouldn't have changed at all. Your buying power would have been the same tomorrow as it was yesterday, tied to physical silver. What happened in the markets over the last few days, and today specifically, Friday the 23rd of January, what happened with silver going up, $7 and change in one day's trading, was actually, if you had treasury certificates that were denominated in gold or silver deposited in the treasury, it wouldn't have moved an ounce, it wouldn't have moved a penny, wouldn't have moved a cent. But because it's just paper, your Federal Reserve dollars lost value today against silver radically, and that's the judgment on that Federal Reserve note. And by the way, where is the value in that Federal Reserve note ultimately? It's not in this world fully. all across that Federal Reserve note, if you get a loupe, a microscope, and magnify portions of it, you'll see all sorts of weird talismans, owls, entities portrayed through there. You're carrying things that actually have demonic associations and secret handshake club associations all through the imagery on those bills that you put in your pocket and you transact with, that you align yourself with forces and powers that are ultimately ungodly and anti-God in heaven. Many of the people in this audience have Christian beliefs, Jewish, even for you Muslims. You must remember that those imagery that you're trading with, that you're forced to trade with in order to pay the rent, get paid at work, pay your taxes. You're transacting in someone else's cult imagery with meaning. And then, by the way, words do mean things. So it's an illusion. It's wordsmithing to say that this is a Federal Reserve note. It is a cult note that you are forced to go to their church, do things their way, accomplish their will, and then they can print as much of it as they want to do mischief all over the world through their banks. That's what Trump is attacking. And bringing back home to a treasury certificate backed by real gold and silver. And for those people that think that Trump is, into certain other groups, religious groups, when he takes down the city of London, which is what he's on the path to do to ensnare them. And by the way, the cure can't be worse than the disease. He's not looking to crash our ship of state or other ships of state. He's looking to recapture control of the helm of the ships of state. The business of America is business. That's what Reagan said. We've got to maintain hull speed and be able to continue to do business. But we're transitioning away from the pirates' authority and way of steering the ship, back to sounder minds, saner minds, and away from the shallow waters, the shoals, the reefs in this storm that we're in right now. So,
Well, another great analysis. Thank you, Juan. A couple of quick comments and we'll wrap up our broadcast. I appreciate everybody's time, including our two producers. We're transacting in someone else's cult. Wow, that really says it all and hits home. And this demonic paper running through our fingers that gives us food and all this other stuff we need to survive. We're going to be transitioning that slime out of our hands into God's money once again. Thank you, President Trump, and everyone else for making this dangerous situation transition out of. I want to say this: I'm talking to our audience. God has us here at this time in history for a reason. And it's to find out what our duty is and to fulfill it, our purpose. And part of our purpose is our duty to serve others. I can't think of a better time, any time in history, than right now to be serving others, because we're fighting for sovereignty as individuals and we're fighting to recapture, as Juan says, the ship of state, which is our U.S. Constitution and way of life here, which was God ordained to begin with. So this is God's plan. This is why it's a battle between good and evil. And in my opinion, the satanic controls are slipping away rather rapidly. But in my final statement, we go around the panel, we're done, is this. As Juan has alluded to and reminded us in this broadcast, that we still have yet to have our near-death experience as a nation, as much as we've been through, and perhaps a near-death experience for the U.S. dollar before it gets salvaged and greater than ever before. With these dangers that are front and center right now, at the height of the storm that Trump told us about in 2017, that is here right now, General Blaine Holt, what advice can you give to the American people as these dangers are hitting the streets of America?
You need to stay connected to God. You need to embrace your local neighbors, your community. The local level is where we all need to be resilient. We need to pull together. We can't know all the calamities that we're going to face as things get a little tougher before they get better. But I know that it can't happen if you're not embracing God, your communities, and your neighborhood.
Thank you, sir. Same closing question to the entire panel. Lieutenant Colonel Matt Mack, sir.
As General Holt just said, pray. Every Friday coalition call, I lead it off with God, your will, not ours, and help us to do the things you want us to do and not do the things you don't want us to do. And dovetailing what General Holt just said, reclaim the physical domain. That means your home, your family, your neighbors, your community. And to what General Holt also alluded to, your neighbor's not bad because they're a Democrat. They're not bad because they're a Republican. They're not bad because they're liberal or they're conservative. We're all Americans, and it's we the people versus you name it. West Rock. I like what Peter Tickton calls it, West Rock, City of London, or the cabal. Stop with the false labels. It's a choice they're forcing upon you, like they made us believe we have a democracy. We don't have a democracy. It's a constitutional republic. Words matter. Reclaim the physical domain. Pray to God daily.
Thank you. A quick comment. 9/11, we united. We helped one another on the streets of New York City. We didn't care, to your point, Matt, if you were Democrat or Republican or whatever the case may be. The division disappeared and the unity arrived. We need that now for what's coming more than ever. Thank you, Matt Mack. Same question to Captain Peter, sir.
Well, John, and to everybody out there, I think what's been said is absolutely true. Is prayer is so critical at this time, and one of the phrases that we use in warfare is the fog of war. Well, fog affects principally one of our senses, in the visual, and you can't see through it. Well, being a fighter guy, one of the things that sees through fog is in another portion of the spectrum, right? Radar sees through fog, so we need to tap into other areas when things are confusing, when things are not as they appear. God said that you shall know the truth the way things really are, and the truth shall set you free. And the Holy Spirit will guide us, and will guide us into all truth. And so we need to be seeking that truth as we navigate in this, these potentially very confusing times. We've talked about Democrat versus Republican. Remember, these people are chameleons, and they will pit two groups against one another with the sole intent of sacrificing one so they can continue to exist in another form and move on. So, getting away from labels and really seeking God for His wisdom and His guidance.
Amen. Thank you, sir. 107, please close out this broadcast, giving advice to the American people for what's upon us.
Well, I think one thing that's kind of interesting is that I think everybody here within this panel would agree that, say, 10 years ago, even 5 years ago, you probably wouldn't, not that you didn't have faith or a God perspective, but you wouldn't be talking in this kind of an environment in the way you just did, invoking divine assistance, backup, protection in this kind of a circumstance. Even President Trump might have said a little something here or there, but it was not with the intensity he does now, having survived there in Butler, as well as other things that we're not fully aware of yet within the public, and yet he's still here by divine ordinance. With that in mind, I would say for everybody here in the audience, we wouldn't be in this mode right now if it weren't for some type of divine action. The protection, the salvation, the preservation of the American dream is in God's hands. And I would say it goes back to all the way to the Mayflower. Before the people on the Mayflower ever set foot on this land while they were in sight of their landing point on the deck of the ship. They entered into a covenant with God Almighty in heaven about what they would do when they landed, what they would build, how they would act, what they would endorse, and to take that out across the world in a missionary sense, to take the gospel to the world. That covenant is still in play before there was even a constitution in America or founding fathers several generations before. With that in mind, if you align yourself with where God's at and what He's intending to do, I think you're protected in what's to come, and His hand is there to bring you through. There's people in this audience right now. We talked about silver and gold. I don't have any. First thing that's not, I don't. How can I get it? It's not fair. The reality is, you have gifts from God, whatever they may be, and the ability to trade. Just because one person has silver today doesn't mean they have it tomorrow or 10 years from now. And if you are using what God has given you, your skills, your energy, your life, these people are going to want things, need things, and that will flow. That's part of it, transacting. And God Himself has given you the ability. The scripture says wealth comes from the Lord. So if you're sensing that you have need and you're questioning whether that provision is there, I would tell you that I don't think God's gone anywhere. And His promises, His protections are to every person here. Align yourself with God's purposes, and you'll be in the right spot. You don't have to get God to align to your purposes. And that covenant that was made, that's being honored by God, we're still here 400 years later. And I believe that we'll be here for a very long time. Even this moment is a pivot moment to bring things. The pendulum swung way out of whack. It's about to come back. So let me just say a quick prayer. Father God, I thank You for each person here. I thank You for the insights. I thank You for what John has done in creating the program and allowing us to reach people across the country and across the world. And we ask that You would make perfect provision for each person here in this audience as they align themselves with Your purposes. We, as an act of our will, under Your will, Father God, we want to see justice in the world. We want to help and bring health out to the world. We want to help people across the world to realize within what You've given them in life in this world, their dreams to enjoy this world and to work together. We don't seek to be our brother's keeper. We seek to be our brother's brother. And we ask for grace to do that as individuals, as Americans, as fathers and mothers, that we can be about Your will, Your way, Father God. Big doors turn on tiny hinges. And we pray that even these prayers may appear tiny in this world, but the doors that swing on them are huge in Your world, Father God. Bless us according to Your will. Give us what we need. Make perfect provision so that we may be about the things You would have us do in this world to bring good into this world: beauty, life, light, art, pleasures that give You pleasure, Father God. We were created for Your pleasure. Allow us to do things that please You. We ask all of that in Jesus' name. By the blood of Christ, make it so. Amen.
Amen. Beautiful, very inspirational. Thank you, 107. Biographies and contact information for our guests can be viewed by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. On the upper left of the navigation bar, hit contributors, and you can read their biographies and get connected up with this panel. And I can't thank this panel enough for your keen insights and brilliant and timely and important analysis on the issues concerning us here in this country and the rest of the world for that matter. So on behalf of patriots across America, I salute you, gentlemen, for your service in and out of uniform, for keeping us accurately informed and helping to keep this country safe. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Eyes on Gitmo is a monthly broadcast. Thank you for your time and expertise. We'll see you here next month, and I'll be right back with an important announcement and my closing comments.
Don't miss this month's live Patriot Q&A hour as John Michael Chambers hosts our Patriot Power guest, Will Barney. Get your questions answered. Mark your calendars, January 29, 2026, 8 p.m. Eastern Time sharp. Visit jmcbroadcasting.com and click on the Premium Portal Sign-Up tab. Enter your password and you're in. Not a JMC Broadcasting Premium member yet? You could be. Simply click on the Premium Portal Sign-Up tab. Enter your info, and that's it. John and Will, looking forward to answering your questions for the solid hour. See you there. Where we go one, we go all.
Again, thank you to our esteemed panel here at Eyes on Gitmo. Now, for a free newsletter, you can sign up for free at jmcbroadcasting.com. Free subscription every Friday in your inbox. You will receive our newsletter, a free JMC audio, candid, straightforward narrative update, typically about 30 minutes long, a recap of the events of the week and other insightful and proprietary information, announcements and courtesy links. Also, those interested, we have a premium portal just launched this month, this year, January 2026. As you just saw in the promotion, one of the benefits in the premium portal is a live Q&A for one solid hour. You enter the portal with your password, and I'll act as host, and we bring a Power Patriot guest on. We are launching this with Will Barney. We'll be covering all things economic, but it's not a show. We're on a double panel screen live simply to answer your questions. Next month, February, Michael Jaco will be in the premium portal on our Patriot Q&A hour. So you can sign up for that, learn more about it by visiting the site, click on premium portal, and you'll get the information you need to make an informed decision. So that's it, folks. Stay alert, eyes wide open, ears to the ground, pray, plan, and prepare, and continue to do your part. Gitmo reporting, coming soon. Get the popcorn and enjoy the show. And remember, where we go one, we go all. Be safe, and may God be with you.